I feel that learning how to create lines or outlines, whatever you want to call them, is very important for digitizing. And it doesn't matter what system you're using. This is the area where you learn how to create shapes. You learn how to digitize shapes. Everything that this software has to do with, or any digitizing software has to do with when it comes to creating designs, is all about creating the shape. And that's why it's so important to understand the tools, what to use, how to use them, and practice with them. And it's very easy to practice with the tools. And I would say that it's a good idea that if you don't get into the software a lot, maybe you save a design like you see on the screen here, and you practice about once or twice a week on just outlining stuff. And this way you will be very comfortable with creating or digitizing your own designs, because you will know how to create the shape. And so when we're talking about drawing lines, we're going to be focusing on the different types of creation tools. So in this first section, we're just going to talk about what your options are for actually outlining something. As you can see that this design right here, if I look over in the sequence view, I have it in a light shade, and that's on purpose, but you'll see that it's artwork. What I'm going to do is I'm going to collapse this color sequence by hitting that minus sign right there, and I'm also going to lock it. And the reason I'm going to lock it is because I don't want to select it. So if I have it locked, I can't accidentally select something, because even though I could just convert this to stitches because it's an artwork shape, I'm not going to do that, because you need to learn how to create these outline shapes so that you can digitize. So I'm going to just come in here first and just zoom into this item right here, this little plus symbol. Up at the top, this is where your artwork tool is. And in a previous video, I already explained that when it comes to creating outlines, it's all the same. You're using basically one tool to digitize, even though there might be a running stitch, satin stitch, a steel stitch, fill stitches, all of that, they still use a simple outline. And you can go back and watch that video that's based on understanding how software works to get a little refresher on that, and you'll be able to see how that works. But in this case, I'm going to click on this artwork tool, and I want you to, let me go ahead and click off of it first. You'll notice that this is grayed out right here. When I click on the artwork tool, this now becomes available. And what this is, this line, selecting the input mode, if I hit this drop down, you'll see that there's 3 different ways that we can input a line. We can do it using the regular line tool, a pen tool, and a Bezier tool. And these are very different in the way that you actually create a shape. So let's go ahead and let's just look at the 3 different ways. So the first of all, you have this line. I'm going to click it. This is like the default. This is the one that I always use. By far, I rarely change to the other. There's only special occasions, and I'll show you. So with the line tool, you basically left click, and then you left click again. If I hold down Control on the keyboard, it'll actually create curves. Okay, so that's how this tool works. It's left clicking and right clicking. If you left click, and again I'm using the artwork tool, if I left click, it puts a point down, and it's going to drop another point wherever I click. So if I'm going around a shape like this, because we're going to focus on straight lines in this first section, if I get the artwork tool again, you would just kind of trace it. And that's really what it is. It's just like tracing with a pencil on paper. You're actually just drawing an outline around a shape. And that's all digitizing is creating or tracing these lines, and then we fill them with something. So we either fill it with like a run stitch, or a satin stitch, and that's easy. I can just click on the run stitch tool to convert to it. I can do a steel stitch. I can't do a regular satin on this shape, and you'll get into that a little bit later, and that's just because it's like kind of an odd shape here. The steel stitch works great, and that's this one right here. And then you can do like a fill stitch. You can do a fancy fill. You can do a motif fill. You can fill it with basically anything you want to, a gradient. And that's all that digitizing is nothing more than creating an outline and filling it with stitches. And as I explained in the previous video too about understanding software, this is all virtual. These stitches are virtual representations. It's showing you what it's going to look like on the screen, but it hasn't actually created the stitches yet. You're just seeing what the stitches are going to look like. And that's an important thing to understand in the software, because by having the outline, like if I click and drag, notice that all you see is that outline as I'm dragging around, because that's really all you've created at this point. And it's visually showing you what it's going to fill it with when you save the design, but it hasn't done that yet. And because of that, it allows me to change it to anything I want almost, depending on the shape and the size. So that's an important thing to understand. So that line tool, using the regular line input, like I said, is just left clicking. If you want to get into curves, you'll go into curves. So by holding down Control. So the other method, if I click on this artwork tool again so I can activate the input mode, if I go to the freehand or the pen, I often call it the freehand, the pen is much different. Look at the icon. It shows a pencil. And the reason for that is if I click, I have to click and hold the click down, and I just draw. I'm just moving my mouse around, holding down on my left mouse button, and I just draw until I'm done. And once I release the mouse click, it creates the line. And I can right click, you can see it's still attached. When I right click, it makes it an individual line. And I can convert that to a running stitch. It's a tool that you would think that it would be easy to trace with, but it's not really. Even if you have a pen stylus, it's not easy to trace a line this way. It actually takes a lot longer, and it's very difficult to get it straight. So there's not many applications for this tool. The only time that I'll utilize it is if I'm like going to create my own fill and I want it to be more like hand drawn, or if I have something that I want to, I know that's kind of hard to see. I need to get a different color selected. That's what I need to do. I could trace out a signature if I wanted to. Now I'll tell you that with the Floriani software you can do quite a bit. If you really want to get into hand drawing stitches, you definitely want to check out Sketch-a-Stitch, and it's much better for doing that kind of work for a number of reasons, but it just behaves different. So that is the pen tool. It's just left clicking and dragging to wherever you want to go. Now, if you're wanting to create your own stipple stitches and stuff like that, you could do it, but you could notice that as I'm doing this, it's very difficult to create smooth lines with it. It just is not easy to do that. You'll get a lot of little jagged edges. Again, Sketch-a-Stitch would be much better for that. And that's a different product by Floriani. And let's go ahead and check out the next one. So I'm going to click on this artwork tool again, and I'm going to come in here and choose the Bezier. And with the Bezier tool, you don't hold down Control to create curves. Now you can just go around, do straight lines. If you want to do a curve, what you do is you left click and hold the click and drag. So you can see here, that's how you will create curves, is clicking and dragging. So it's not, in my opinion, it's kind of hard to learn how to use that tool. There are a lot of people in the graphic design industry that are very comfortable using the Bezier tool, but I would highly recommend sticking with the regular pen tool. You'll have much more success. It'll be easier for you to learn how to create shapes. Bezier tool, again, is just click for a straight line, click and hold and drag to create a curve. Once you release it, it sets it. Click and drag, straight line. So it's very simple to use. Well, it's not simple. It's in theory it's simple. It's actually very difficult to learn how to control if you're starting out. So again, if I click on the artwork tool, you have the 3 different types. I highly recommend line. I think that it's the easiest to work with. Now, the other thing I want to point out with these is that if I go to and set the pen, and now if I go and I choose like a running stitch, you can see that it's still using that input mode. And the reason it is because once you select the input mode here, that's what it's going to use for everything for a regular artwork tool or a digitizing tool. It's going to create using that. So if I come in here and I choose the Bezier, and let's say this time I want to do a fill stitch, notice that the Bezier tool is still selected. You can tell by the icon down at the bottom of the cursor. It has like a little circle with squiggly lines. So it does matter which one you choose. It'll affect, what will be used when you're creating with the other tools. So if you ever get stuck, you can always just activate the artwork tool here, go back and go to the line tool. Now, there are things that you can do. If you look down here at the bottom, you'll see that you have a Q, F, and a B. It's kind of hard to see here, but a Q, F, and a B, what that is the Q is the regular line mode, F is the pen tool, and B is the Bezier tool. Those are keyboard shortcuts. So whenever you have the artwork tool or digitizing tool selected, right now I'm in the line tool. I can tell because it has that plus symbol for the cursor. If I wanted to then switch to like the pen tool, all I have to do is click F on my keyboard, and now I'm in that tool. And I could go back by choosing Q, and I get right back into the line mode. If I hit B, now watch the cursor, I'll be in the Bezier tool. So you can actually switch as you go by using those keyboard shortcuts. And it's always displayed down here whenever you're using one of these tools. So if I select one of the tools, you can see it shows me QFB, and that's in order that you see here. This is Q, this is F, this is B. So just wanted to point that out. So as we get going in these lessons, we're going to first focus on just creating straight lines like what you see here. And then we'll get into drawing curved lines, and we'll make it a little bit more challenging as you go. But this is a good thing to practice and get as good as you can at, because it's everything to digitizing is learning how to outline and create the shapes that you can then fill with stitches. And this artwork tool is nothing different than these digitizing tools. You might use it a little different in how you actually create a structure, like because of the satin, classic satin's a little bit different, but a run stitch is identical to the line tool, and so, or the artwork tool, and so is creating using the still stitch or the fill stitch or the regular satin, the applique tool. It's identical to using the artwork tool, and it is basically the artwork tool. It just automatically will apply stitches when you right click. So it's just important to understand how this all works. And so in the videos we're going to get into learning how to actually create the shapes, but you'll want to figure out which method works best for you. And I'm pretty confident that 99.9% of you are going to like the line tool the best. And that's what I'm going to use in the lessons, because I don't feel like it's worth the time and effort to try to get good at the other two methods. I think it's just a waste of time. So we'll see you in the next videos.